What's up, everybody? Welcome back and happy October. Today is day 2 of 31 days of Halloween, and for day 2 I watched the movie Haunt. On Halloween, a group of friends encounter a extreme haunted house that promises to feed their darkest fears. The night turns deadly as they come to the horrifying realization that some nightmares are real. So that's a quick synopsis of the film Haunt, directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods. This is a really good film that I have seen before, but I decided to watch it again for the second day of October, and I actually ended up enjoying it more than I had enjoyed it the first time around. So kicking right off with some of the positive things about the film, I do think the acting is pretty good, actually. Everybody is decent enough so that even though some of their character traits are a little generic and can be annoying because they're teenagers going to a haunted house on Halloween, I think the acting is all pretty good and it really carries you through the film pretty well. I think the main girl, Katie Stevens, is pretty good. A lot of the story hinges on her. She's got most of the backstory, and she's really who we're kind of following along in this film. She's got a little bit of history with family and her boyfriend, who's kind of a jerk, alcoholic, and so she's got some issues, and we're really sort of following her along the night as she joins her friends and goes to this haunted house. I think she does a pretty good job portraying her character, who's kind of like traumatized, a little bit shy, hesitant, but then also has to sort of come through and be your strong character at the end also. I also like Will Britton a lot. He's the other character who I think I related to the most and I really wanted to see live. Most of the characters are pretty good. There's only one character I really don't like who was kind of annoying. That's that guy. I cannot remember his name, but he's the guy from the movie College. He's just like the over the top comedian guy. He's okay. He's a little annoying in the beginning and some other parts where it sort of fits that he would be annoying, and he does make some smart decisions at the end that makes up for it a little bit, or towards the end, but he's just not my favorite. Another thing I really enjoy is the overall story. I think it's really simple. It's a bunch of teenagers trying to find an extreme haunted house on Halloween. They're bored, they want something to do, it makes sense, it's logical, and they don't answer a lot of questions about what's going on, but they also don't leave a lot of questions to be asked. There's one part that I had a question about that I'll get into later, but overall the story is very simple. I like how they don't complicate things too much. You're just all along this ride for the night with these teenagers in this haunted house, Halloween night, and it's very well executed, and I think it's just perfect for what this movie needs it to be. And that leads right into the setting of the story, and I think that the setting of the maze is just perfect. I think the production value is really good. This is a kind of maze where I would actually like to go to it. I mean, obviously not after watching the movie, but the maze itself would be really cool to see. A lot of times you watch these films that are about these extreme mazes or these crazy haunted houses, and it's like, that's nothing I haven't seen before. It's super generic. I wouldn't even pay to go see this, but this is the kind of haunt that's really creative, really unique, and I appreciate all the work that went into the set design, all the creativity that went into actually following through the maze and sort of making sense of how our characters went through it, but weren't able to just turn around and leave. You know, it really felt like you were into this maze, even though the building is not huge, you don't necessarily know the dimensions. It feels like you're really walking into the maze with them and you're going deeper and deeper into it. So when they are unable to really get out later in the movie and they're finding out what's going on, you feel like you are kind of actually in the maze with them. The walls feel solid. It feels like they've created an appropriate environment that you're like, this is logical. It makes sense. I feel like it would be difficult to get out of here, and I can't just like go out the back door or break down the wall. And everything looks really good. It's intricate, and it makes sense leading one room into the next room without making it seem like, oh, you could have just skipped over that and gone straight into the next room. It feels like you genuinely have to go on this journey with them and sort of figure out what's coming next, and it's really unique and really well done. And through that, following the characters through these mazes, there is a lot of really well done tension. The rooms are so elaborate and well designed, and there's some claustrophobia, but there's also like really large rooms. I think that just adds to the expanse of how this building feels, like it's so large, yet they're confined in this area. And I think that really helps to add a lot of tension to the film. The fact that there's very little there's no other characters really in the film, with the exception of the introduction of the very first person who has them sign waivers and gets them in. You don't see a whole lot of people, and I think that really, really benefits it. They don't go over the top trying to make them showy and scare them. They really just let the characters wander in, and, you know, by that, the audience is wandering in to this maze and sort of discovering it as they go on. The other thing I really did enjoy is when you do see the other characters, the villains, or the other people in the haunt that are, before you really know what's going on, they're all wearing these masks and they all look really cool. The costume designs are really good. And I love how the characters are just the masks are so simple, and the characters are so simple and quiet, and they're not over the top, and they're just very effective in what they're going for. There's hardly any dialogue until you get to a certain point in the movie from the people in the haunt, and I think it works so well. When other directors and other movies would have a tendency to really want to put on a show and make it elaborate and make it seem like this is a haunt that you want to come to, it sort of invites you in with its secrecy and its mystery. And I think that the masks and the costumes just really add to that. Going off of that though, when you do get the reveal of what's going on and sort of who's behind it, they did such a good job, I think, of making it. This also probably is because they have understated it so much before that when they do have the reveal, it's really effective. But I think they just did such a good job of making the actual reveals so effective on their own that I almost didn't expect there to be a reveal. And then there was, and I feel like it just works on a whole other level because it's creepy already. It's already interesting. It's already cool. I don't even need to see what's going on. And sometimes a movie can have a tendency to want to explain that and tell you, and then it can ruin it. But somehow they found the perfect way to create this mystery, and then in the reveals actually add to it and build upon that. And I think they did just a really good job with that. Also, talking about building upon the story, I do like the ending a lot. I do think that the actual ending of the film that we go out on is a sort of hit or miss ending. I've seen it done where I think it brings the film down. I've seen it done where I think it really works. In this, I think it really works because it could have survived with the ending right before we got that little additional part, and it would have been okay. It would have left you on a good note, maybe kind of a darker note. But the ending that they do add is just like a little icing on the cake, a little extra perfection on top. And I think it really works and makes you feel like that's what was earned and what was deserved. I'm really glad that we got that. The only positive that I forgot to mention are the effects. And I think the effects in this film are really well done. Costumes, costume design, everything that's really well done, but also the traps and the gore. It's not a super overly gory movie, but there are definitely some moments, and they use a lot of practical effects that look really good. I think that they're shot in a way that are very believable. And I think that the practical effects look really good. On to the negatives about Haunt. I do think that the subplot with the main character and some of her trauma with her parents and the boyfriend, I think that while it works okay, and I like that it's there, I think it adds to the film in ways and adds to the depth, and it also gives us that little ending that I like. I do think that it could have been handled better, especially some of the flashback parts when she's going into her mind and she's remembering these things and she's sort of checking out. I think those could have been handled a little better. They looked kind of cheap, and I don't know. I think it was a little sloppy how they handled it. Overall, I liked that they added that story and they didn't go too overboard with it. I think it was needed for her character, but I think they could have handled it a little better. The only other negative thing about the characters is there definitely are a little bit of character tropes in here, just teenagers in a haunted house that are familiar and overdone. I think they're done well. They're not too hollow of characters. They're explained enough and they have enough depth for you to be able to care about them, but there's definitely some tropes in here that are to be expected with this type of movie. The other thing I really didn't enjoy about this film is, as I explained, they created so much tension with feeling like you were really into the maze with them, and they made it seem like the characters couldn't just turn around and walk out. But then, towards the end of the film, when one of the characters decides to go seek out help, they make it seem pretty easy for him to get out. I mean, it's not like he just turns around and walks out. It's a little more complex. He has to retrace his steps and go out through the maze, but it does feel a little bit like, okay, well, they could have just done that. And I mean, even though they do add some explanations for how they did it, it wasn't super easy. It does ruin it just a little bit, but especially when he actually gets out, what happens, what the character decides to do, and what happens when he's outside and he's out of the haunt is just, it's just one of those things you just roll your eyes at in horror films, and it brings it down a little bit because, you've got all this tension, but they've got to keep the story going somehow. And inevitably, these are the kind of things that, it wasn't the worst thing, but it definitely makes me roll my eyes a little bit. In addition to that, how all of the characters get out of the rooms and how everyone who escapes does escape is a little bit contrived near the end. It doesn't seem super rushed. I mean, I think they did a good job with it overall, but you can't help but feel like you've lost some of this tension with this giant, building that they're in and this maze that they're in. And all of a sudden, kind of everybody's able to find a way out or a way through something. And it does kill a little bit of that tension. And the fact that they're able to do that without getting caught and things don't exactly happen to them right away is a little bit far-fetched, but it carries the movie forward, so we kind of need it. My final negative is not a big deal, but it's just a question I would have liked to have answered. And that's just how the people that are responsible for this haunt are able to sort of build this haunt for one night and then pack up and then move on and do it again the next year, or if this is their first year, or just a little bit, maybe a little more of an explanation for how they're able to do that, and especially so effectively with how complex the haunt is. Again, this is just a nitpick. I would have liked a little bit of an answer for that. But yeah, overall, Haunt is a really good October watch. I think it's one of the better haunted house films, and I know it came out and it got some buzz, and then I think it got sort of like swept under the rug and got some mediocre reviews, and I think that it's worthy of a lot of praise. If you haven't seen it, definitely worth checking out, especially if you like Halloween time, haunted house, maze, horror films. This is one of the better ones, I think. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I actually really enjoyed this more this time around than the first time around. And I'm wondering why that is, because I wonder if there's something that I didn't appreciate as much the first time around that other people are not appreciating for it not to gain a little more popularity that I feel it deserves. I don't know, I really enjoyed it the second time around. I forgot how good it was. And it's definitely going to be added to my yearly Halloween watch. So thanks for checking this out. If you made it all the way to the end, I appreciate it. And thanks for joining me for day 2 of 31 Days of Halloween.